The sky was dark, stars were shining quietly. All was peaceful. Then suddenly, the peace was broken. A loud sound filled the night. Something was falling from the sky, fast, burning, and bright like fire. People in the small village looked up, confused and afraid. It was not a plane. It was not a shooting star. It was something else, something unknown. The object crashed into the forest with a loud explosion. Trees shook. Birds flew away. The ground trembled. A bright blue light flashed for a moment. Then everything went quiet again. In the middle of the forest, there was smoke and fire. A spaceship, small, broken, and glowing, lay on the ground. It was badly damaged. Metal parts were burning. Lights were blinking weakly. From the smoke, a tall figure stepped out slowly. Her legs were shaking. Her skin was pale blue and glowing softly. Her eyes were large and full of pain. She was not human. In her arms, she held a small child. The little girl was crying softly. She had the same blue skin, the same glowing eyes. She was scared. The woman looked around. She was breathing heavily. Her clothes were torn. One arm was bleeding. She looked at her daughter and whispered, "Don't cry. We'll be okay." But she was not sure of her own words. Her name was Arlia. She had come from a planet far away. A planet that no longer existed. She had lost everything, her family, her home, her people. Now she had only one thing left. Her daughter. Arlia walked a few steps, then fell to her knees. The ground was cold. The air was heavy. This planet was strange. But she had no choice. Her ship was gone. There was no going back. She pulled her daughter close and looked up at the sky. The stars were different here. Nothing was familiar. She was truly lost. Not far from the crash site, a group of villagers had gathered. They had seen the fire in the sky. Some brought flashlights. Some had phones in their hands. They stood near the trees, watching the crash site from a distance. "What is that thing?" One man whispered. "Is it a plane?" A woman asked. "No, look at the shape." "It's not from here," said an older man, eyes wide. Then someone pointed. "Look, there's something moving." The people became quiet. They watched as Arlia tried to stand again. She was holding the child in one arm and using the other to balance herself. She did not look dangerous. She looked weak, hurt, lost. "Is that a woman?" someone said. "She's blue. Is she even human? Should we help?" "No, we don't know what she is. Call someone." "Call the police." Arlia heard voices. She could feel their fear. She looked toward them, but didn't move. She didn't want to scare anyone. She just needed shelter. Food, safety. But the people were already backing away. "They might be dangerous. Stay away." Arlia lowered her head. She understood. Fear was natural. Even on her planet, people feared the unknown. She sat down by a rock, holding her daughter close. The little girl was cold and hungry. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Suddenly, Arlia felt something. A presence. She opened her eyes quickly. There, standing behind a tree, was a small human boy. He looked around 10 years old. He had a flashlight in his hand and a backpack on his shoulders. His eyes were wide, but not full of fear. They were full of curiosity. He stepped forward, slowly. Arlia didn't move. She simply watched him. The boy looked at her, then at the child. The little girl looked back at him. There was a long silence. Then, the boy opened his bag and took out a small piece of bread. He held it out. Arlia blinked. Surprised. The boy said softly, "It's okay. You look hungry." Arlia didn't understand his words, but she understood the meaning. She looked at her daughter, then slowly reached out and took the bread. "Thank you," she whispered in her own language. The boy smiled. "You talk funny." Behind the boy, someone shouted, "Eli, what are you doing? Get back here." The boy turned. "Wait," he said. "They're not bad." But the voice replied, "Come now, it's not safe." The boy looked at Arlia again, then ran back into the trees. Arlia watched him disappear. A small smile appeared on her face. For a moment, she felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, this planet was not all fear. She looked at her daughter, who was now sleeping in her arms. "We will survive," she whispered. "We must." Then she looked up at the stars, wondering if someone else, somewhere, had also seen them fall. The night was still dark, but no longer quiet. The forest whispered with wind and tension in the distance. Red lights blinked slowly through. The trees' voices of humans echoed softly, moving closer to the crash site. Arlia sat hidden behind a large, fallen tree, holding her daughter tightly in her arms. Blue glow of her skin faded as she tried to stay quiet, invisible, forgotten. Her daughter breathed gently, fast asleep in a dreamless rest. The boy from earlier, Eli was his name, stood far behind the other humans near the trees. Watching, listening, he wanted to speak, wanted to help, but fear held his voice in his throat. The villagers had called. Someone, people with suits and weapons and blinking machines. They said it was for safety. They said it was for Earth. But Arlia knew fear when she saw it, and she knew what came next. She had seen it before on her home planet when strangers arrived. With loud machines and cold eyes, fear turns quickly into fire. She could feel the heat in the air, the kind that comes before an attack. One of the humans stepped forward, slowly scanning the area with a silver device. Another spoke into a small radio, saying, "Unknown life form, possibly non-hostile, proceed with caution AR." Leah looked at her daughter, her only reason to keep breathing. The girl moved slightly in her sleep, a small whimper escaping her lips. The sound was soft but sharp enough to catch. Attention, one of the scanning devices beeped. Red lights turned toward their direction. There was no more hiding now. Arlia stood slowly, holding her child close, and stepped out from behind the tree. She raised her hand with her fingers open, showing she carried no weapon, no harm, only fear and hope. The humans pointed their weapons toward her, yelling orders in a language she did not understand. She took a step forward, then stopped, trying to speak. "We mean no harm," she said in her native tongue, her voice soft like music but shaking with worry. No one understood the words, but everyone felt the meaning still. The weapons stayed raised, the eyes stayed cold. One of the humans, a tall man in a black suit, spoke into his radio again, saying, "Target found." Female non-human holding juvenile, possibly dangerous. Eli ran forward, breaking the line, shouting, "She has a child. She's not hurting anyone. She's just scared." Adults pulled him back, warning him not to go near, but Arlia's eyes met his for a second, and she nodded slowly as if to say thank you. Suddenly, a bright blue shimmer formed in front of her, a protective energy field from the tiny crystal on her wrist. It was weak, flickering, but strong enough to shield her daughter. The humans grew louder now, pointing at the shield, raising their voices. "This is a threat," one said. "She's armed," another replied. "No, she's afraid." Eli shouted again. "Don't you see she's protecting the kid inside the shield?" Arlia whispered to her daughter in her own language, "Hold on, little star. Don't be afraid, hold on." The tension thickened in the air like smoke. One soldier stepped forward a little too fast. His foot snapped a branch. The sound, like a gunshot in the silence. Arlia flinched. The shield reacted, glowing brighter. A warning shot fired into the air just above her head, the sound echoing across the forest. Her daughter woke up, screaming a high, sharp cry that pierced the night. And then something strange happened. The crystal on Arlia's wrist began to pulse, sending a wave of soft light into the air, like a signal, like a call for help. Everyone stopped, frozen by the glow. Eli stared in awe. The soldiers stared in confusion. Arlia held her child tighter, her heart pounding like thunder. In her chest, she had used the last energy from the crystal. Now she had nothing left to hide behind. She stood quietly, waiting to see what these humans would do next. The forest was silent again, but this time it was the silence before a decision, and decisions like that can change everything. The night grew colder as silence returned to the broken forest. Smoke still rose from the crashed ship like a ghost reaching for the sky. Air. Leah sat beside a tree, her arms wrapped around her daughter, her eyes heavy with memories. She looked at the small glowing crystal on the child's neck, flickering like a dying star. This was all that remained of their past, their home, their people. Child held the crystal gently close to her chest. It gave a little warmth, like the hand of someone long gone. The soldiers had left, but not far away they were watching from a distance, whispering, in radios drawing lines in the dirt. Tilly had hidden behind a bush, watching, too afraid to speak, too young to stop anything, but too human to look away inside. Her mind, Arlia saw her home again, floating in darkness, surrounded by rings of gold and clouds of color. She remembered the towers, the air full of music, the laughter of her people, and the little garden where her daughter used to play. But then came fire, then came ships that blocked the sun, voices that demanded surrender, and silence that followed screams. She was a scientist, not a soldier. She studied light, she read the stars, she believed in peace. But peace was not what arrived. Her partner, her friends, her city, all turned to dust in one long, endless night. She had one chance, only one, to escape, and she took it with her daughter in her arms and a star map in her hand. Now the map was broken, the crystal that held it fading slowly. Minute by minute her daughter looked up, eyes wide, innocent, asking questions without words. Arlia smiled weakly, running her fingers through the child's soft silver hair. She whispered in their native tongue, "This map once showed every path across the stars, every world, every gate, every hope. But now it shows only one thing, a message locked inside, waiting to be opened, waiting for light, waiting for time." And time was something they no longer had. Suddenly, the crystal flickered again, brighter than before, and a soft hum filled the air. The girl looked down and touched it gently, and in that moment, a beam of light rose from the crystal, painting shapes in the air. A star system appeared, spinning slowly around a red sun, with lines moving across the sky like a map drawn in fire. Relay gasped from behind the tree, his eyes wide, his mouth open, unable to believe what he was seeing. Projection showed a warning, signs in a language not human, not earthly, but the feeling was clear. Danger was coming. Map blinked once, then vanished, leaving only the night and the wind behind. Arlia looked up, sensing movement in the trees. Footsteps too careful, too quiet to be animals. They were being watched again. She stood slowly, lifting her daughter into her arms. She walked away from the crash, moving deeper into the forest. Away from lights, away from fear. Ile followed at a distance, stepping carefully between roots and rocks. Holding his breath, heart beating fast, he knew he had to help them, but he didn't know how. He didn't know who to trust, not even the adults around him. Leah stopped beside a small stream, letting her daughter drink the cold water, her own hands shaking from weakness. She looked at the crystal again, the last map, the last memory, the last hope. It was dying, and when it died, they would truly be lost forever. From the trees a whisper came, soft and strange, not a voice, but something else, like a machine waking up, like a mind touching. Anathoralia turned sharply, holding her child, close, eyes glowing brighter with sudden fear. Something had heard the signal, something old and far from human, and now it was coming. The sky was waking, turning from black to dark blue, as morning began to touch the world. Birds stirred in the trees, unaware of the quiet war growing below the mar. Leah moved through the forest slowly, carefully, her daughter resting against her shoulder, eyes half closed. The crystal around the girl's neck was cold, now silent, its glow fading into memory behind them. Eli stepped softly, watching with quiet breath, his small hands gripping the straps of his backpack. He had followed them all night, not because he was told to, not because he had to, but because something inside him whispered, "This matters. This is not just about fear." He remembered the way the alien mother looked at her child, the way her eyes begged not for help, but for understanding. Back at the village, things were changing. People were scared. Some wanted to call for more soldiers, more weapons, more rules. Some just wanted to forget what they saw, pretend nothing had fallen from the sky, pretend nothing strange had cried like a child in the trees. Not everyone wanted fear. One man stood quietly at the edge of the forest, a man named Tom, a mechanic and father of two. He had seen the crash with his own eyes, and he had seen the child said nothing to the others, just packed a warm blanket and some food, then walked into the trees alone. He did not carry a gun, he carried bread. Deep in the forest, Arlia stopped near a small cave hidden under roots and stones. She placed her daughter gently inside, wrapping her in leaves and cloth from her own clothes. Her arms trembled from hunger, from exhaustion, from fear that never rested. Then she heard the sound of footsteps, not Eli, not the trees, but heavier, older, careful, but not hiding. She turned quickly, her eyes bright with warning, her hands rising to shield. Tom stepped forward slowly, his hands open, his face calm, his eyes tired, but not cruel. He said, "I don't know what you are. I don't know where you came from, but I saw your child and I saw your eyes, and I have seen that kind of pain before." Leah didn't understand the words, but she felt the tone, the rhythm, the truth inside them. She lowered her hands. Tom placed the blanket on the ground slowly, then the food, then stepped back. He said softly, "It's not much, but maybe it helps." She bowed her head lightly, her body shaking with silent thanks. Eli stepped out from the shadows, then running up beside Tom, he said, "I told you she's not bad. She's just a mom like mine." Tom nodded, but his eyes watched the trees behind. He said, "We don't have long. Soldiers are coming back, and they're bringing others, people in suits, not soldiers, but something worse, people who ask questions with cold hands and write answers in locked rooms." Aurelia held her daughter close again, her heart pounding, her breath sharp and fast. She knew what those kinds of people did on her own world, and she had no reason to believe Earth would be any kinder. Tom looked at Eli, then at the alien woman. He said, "If you want to stay hidden, I know a place far away deep in the woods where no one goes, not even hunters. But we have to leave now." Arlia did not answer with words, simply stood with her child and followed, no questions, only trust. Behind them in the trees, a camera lens blinked once, then vanished, and far away inside a dark van, someone whispered into a headset, "Target is moving east. Child is with her. 2 humans in contact. Authorization pending." The voice on the other side replied, "Do not engage yet. Observe only for now." The forest changed as they moved deeper. Trees grew taller, branches wove like fingers in prayer. Light barely touched the ground, only shadows danced with the wind. Tom walked ahead, carrying a small lantern in one hand. Eli walked behind, watching every step, careful not to snap a twig. Arlia walked between them, her daughter asleep in her arms. Every breath she took was a whisper, every heartbeat was a question. They reached an old wooden cabin hidden under vines and dust. Tom opened the door, slow and gentle, as if the wood itself might cry out. Inside, the air smelled of time, of forgotten fire, of stories never told. Said, "This place belonged to my grandfather. No one comes here, no one remembers it. There's food in cans, a heater that works if you hit it just right, and water from the stream behind." Arlia stepped inside, slowly, eyes scanning every corner. She placed her daughter on a soft pile of blankets and covered her with her own shawl. The girl stirred in her sleep, her hands holding the crystal tight like a memory that refused to fade. Eli sat near the door, pulling out his notebook, drawing what he saw. He sketched the mother, the child, the crystal, the stars from the night before. He didn't understand why, but something told him this was history, something more than just a story. Tom lit the heater and handed Arlia a small cup of warm broth. She smelled it carefully, then sipped, her eyes closing for a moment, not from taste but from relief. It was the first warmth she had felt in days, maybe weeks, maybe longer. Eli moved closer and pointed at the crystal. He said, "I saw it glow. I saw the map. Is it a way home?" Leah looked at the boy, her eyes soft and tired. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she held the crystal in both hands and tilted it toward the small beam of morning light that slipped through the wooden cracks. The crystal responded. It blinked, then it pulsed, then it spoke, not with sound, but with feeling. A message formed in the air like mist, a hologram of stars spinning slowly, a symbol flashing red again and again. A warning. Tom stepped back, his voice low. "What is that?" Eli stared wide-eyed. "It's not just a map." Arlia touched her daughter's head, and the image changed. Now it showed a planet burning, cities turning to ash, skies filled with shadows, ships shaped like blades flying through black clouds. They Are coming, she whispered in her own tongue. And they will not ask for peace, Eli said. Who are they? Why are they following you? She pointed to herself, then her daughter. Last only us, only one. Tom sat down hard on an old chair thinking. His hands ran through his beard, his eyes full of doubt and duty. He said, if that's true, then we don't have time, we have to protect the girl. Eli stood up. We need to hide her, somewhere they can't find her, somewhere safe. The crystal blinked once, then dimmed again. It was almost gone. Arlia looked at Eli. She reached forward, placing the crystal around his neck. He tried to give it back, but she shook her head. She said, protect. The weight of it felt heavy, not just the crystal, but the trust. Outside, the wind began to howl. Not natural, not gentle, like something was tearing through the clouds far away, near the edge of the forest. Machines began to move, wheels on dirt, boots on leaves, voices on radios in the cabin. Ellie turned to Arlia. What if they find us? What happens then? She looked at her sleeping daughter, then at the door, then at the stars, and said softly, then we run again. Asterisk. The wind carried voices through the trees, voices not meant to be heard, voices wrapped in wires and codes. Machines rolled slowly through the edge of the forest, scanning, breathing, recording. Inside the old wooden cabin, Eli woke first. His fingers still holding the crystal, its glow faint like the last star in a dying sky. Leah was already awake, sitting near the door, her eyes staring at nothing and everything at once. She had not slept. She could not when danger moved with every leaf, not when her child still breathed in a world that did not want her. The little girl opened her eyes, slowly, her small fingers reaching for the warmth of her mother, her head resting against her chest. Eli whispered, they're close, I can feel it. Tom looked out the cracked window, through the trees, through the shadows, and nodded. We have to move, he said, but not yet, not until we know where they are. Leah turned to Elin, touched the crystal around his neck, her hand soft but full of urgency. Closed her eyes and the crystal blinked once, then again, and then it opened, not like a door, but like a memory. A beam of blue light rose from its core, painting the room in stars, lines forming paths, constellations, blinking with soft warnings. At the center, a new shape formed, a triangle with fire circling it, a code that moved like it was alive. Eli stepped closer, his voice a whisper. What is it saying? The light bent around them, like a blanket, like a secret. Tarlia stood and pointed toward a star. Far off to the side, small, barely visible, but steady, it pulsed slowly, and each pulse echoed through the air like a heartbeat. That star, she said softly, is safe, but for Eli looked at her confused. You want to go there? But how? She shook her head. Not me. Not now. Her voice faded like smoke at the end of a song. Tom turned toward the map, then toward Arlia. It a planet, a base, a refuge. She nodded once before everything. It was a listening post, a quiet place, where sound was kept safe, where voices could be heard across galaxies. But now it was more than that. Now it was the last light, the last door. Crystal began to dim again, its power draining like water through fingers. Eli touched the image, and for a moment it responded, spinning faster, glowing brighter. He could feel it, feel something, not just data, not just stars, but fear. A message began to play inside his mind, in words and feelings, fire and metal, screams and cold light, black ships with red cores. Silence before impact. He stepped back, breathing heavy. They're not just looking for her, they're looking for something more. Tom said, what do they want? Eli answered without thinking. Everything outside. The wind stopped, not because it was calm, but because something had arrived, something that made even nature hold its breath. Arlia stood holding her daughter close, her body still, her eyes closed. Said, they are near, they are listening, they heard the crystal, they always hear. Eli held the crystal tighter, his hands shaking. Then we have to go now, we have to move. Tom packed what little food they had, wrapped the girl in a warm coat, and opened the cabin. Arlia stepped into the light, her head tilted, her ears listening to the forest, and then she spoke one word in her own language. Not meant for humans, not meant for this earth. The trees shifted, the air cracked, and somewhere far above the clouds something answered. The girl looked up into the sky, her eyes wide. Stars blinked once, then twice, and something started moving toward them. Not a threat, not yet, but not a friend either. The sky turned silver as morning rose over the treetops, but the light felt different, heavy, stretched, quiet, like the world was waiting to exhale. Ilia stood at the edge of the clearing, holding her daughter close, wrapped in the last piece of warmth she had left. The girl's breath soft like fog in the cold air. Eli stood beside her, the crystal around his neck glowing faintly, flickering like a memory fighting to stay alive. Tom packed the last supplies into his old backpack, glancing toward the sky again and again, because something was coming, and it was not walking on the ground. They could all feel it now, not just in their bones, but in the silence. The way the wind moved backward, the way the birds had stopped singing, the way the air hummed without sound. Ilia knelt beside her daughter and brushed her hair gently, then took Eli's hand and placed it over the crystal. She whispered something low, soft, a language older than the stars, a sound filled with both sorrow and strength. Eli looked at her confused but didn't let go. She pressed her forehead to her daughter's one last time, her eyes glowing brighter than ever, then dimming like the final light in a storm. Tom stepped closer. You're not coming with us, are you? Leah stood tall, her body thin, her breath shallow, her voice nothing but wind. Are here for me, not for her. If I stay, she lives. Eli shook his head, trying to speak, but the words caught in his throat, caught like tears behind his eyes. You don't have to do this. She smiled gently, touched his face and nodded slowly. You are human, but you feel like one of USA. Sound filled the sky like thunder being pulled backward, a low vibration that shook the leaves from the trees and the strength from the earth. A ship appeared above them, black and sharp, shaped like a blade, cutting the sky in half. It did not roar, it whispered. Leah walked forward into the open arms, stretched wide, daughter watching her from behind, tears in her glowing eyes, mouth trembling, silent but screaming inside. Eli held her back, shaking his head over and over, but unable to move forward. Beam of light came down, surrounding Arlia in silver blue, her body beginning to rise, her face calm, her eyes never leaving her daughter's, not even for a second, and then she was gone, swallowed by the light, carried into the sky, taken into silence. The ship turned slowly, then vanished into the clouds without a trace, as if it had never been there at all. The forest breathed again, birds sang again, but everything had changed. Eli held the little girl as she cried into his chest, her hands clutching the empty space where her mother had been. Tom placed a hand on Eli's shoulder and looked at the sky, then at the child, then at the path ahead. We move now, we protect her, like she asked, like she trusted us to tell no one. We hide her from the ones who still search. We raise her as one of ours, not as an alien, but as a daughter. Years later, under that same sky, a girl with glowing eyes stood on a hill watching the stars. She held a crystal that no longer blinked, but still remembered. She whispered, thank you, not to the sky, not to the stars, but to the memory of a mother who gave everything so her child could belong to a world that was never meant to know her. And in that moment, the stars blinked back like they remembered too.